Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good evening. My name is Dan Shear, editor of the Green Valley News and the Sahuarita Sun, and I'm the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is our sponsor. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections is the official sponsor of Arizona debates, so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Voters who are watching this debate live may submit a question at any time. You can submit by email to debates@kc-a.com. You can text to 408-302-1810, or you can just call 480-937-1253, and I'll repeat that information later on. We're going to do our best to get all the audience questions over the next hour. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from candidates in State Legislative District 21, which covers parts of 3 counties that include Nogales, Bisbee, most of Sahuarita, and north into Tucson. This is a primary election debate, and candidates are competing against others in their party to become the official party nominees. All registered voters, including independent voters, can vote in the primary. Independents should have already been contacted to choose a single party ballot that they wish to vote. This evening, we're going to be hearing from 3 Democratic candidates in the House race. Candidates, you're going to have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements, and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue among opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments after they conclude speaking, you may do so. I may limit responses so we can better manage our time, and we remind the candidates and the audience this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. Our 3 Democratic candidates for the House are incumbent Consuelo Hernandez, incumbent Stephanie Stahl Hamilton, and challenger Brianna Ortega. The voters are going to choose 2 candidates among the 3 Democrats to move on to the general election in November. Candidates will give their opening statements, and the order will be reversed for the closing comments. Consuelo Hernandez, this means that we're going to start with you. You have 1 minute for an opening statement.
First off, just want to thank Clean Elections for the opportunity for this debate. Thank you, Dan Shear, for moderating. My name is Consuelo Hernandez. Buenas tardes. I am honored to be one of your current state representatives in our beautiful District 21. We serve a very diverse district and one of the majority Latino districts that I'm really proud to serve in. I was on a mission when I first ran for state representative to continue the work that had previously been laid out, and I was able to successfully bring historic funding for the district in reproductive health care, our roads and infrastructure, and for our dreamers. I hope to continue the work that I've started. I currently serve on the Sunnyside School Board, and I come from a family of public service, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Stahl Hamilton. Stephanie, you are muted. So if you unmute yourself and start over.
It's not a. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Clean Elections, for having this debate, and thank you, Dan Shearer, for moderating. It has been a pleasure and an honor to serve in the state legislature these last 4 years. I first ran for office because I knew the challenges of raising a family in the state of Arizona, and I quickly realized the power that the Arizona State Legislature has to shape the lives of everyday people, such as myself and my husband, who is a public school teacher. I was dismayed with all of the work that I did in my community, local schools, realizing we were working with budgets on a state budget for education that had been decimated. Having access to quality, affordable healthcare was a challenge that I faced with my own family, and I had extreme concerns about our environment and sustainable access to not only clean water, but also the quantity of water that we have throughout the state. I have enjoyed serving on many committees and in both chambers in my time in the legislature. I've served on appropriations. I've been the ranking member of Natural Resources, Energy, and Water. I've served on the Finance Committee in the Senate, as well as Judiciary and the Ethics Committee. And I sure would like to continue the work that I've been doing as well.
Very good. Brianna Ortega, introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, thank you so much to you, Dan, as our moderator, and to Clean Elections. My name is Brianna Ortega. I was born and raised in this district. I'm the very, very proud daughter of 2 immigrant parents, and as a lot of children of immigrants can attest, from a very young age, we have 2 core values that are ingrained in us, and that's hard work and supporting your community. And I'm running for this position because I really believe that we need more effective leadership at the legislature. We have constitutional and civil rights on the line, as we've seen in the last few years. We cannot afford to have anything less than stellar representation. So to the voters at home who are thinking, okay, I agree with you, but why is it you, Brianna? Why is it you that we are voting for? I'll tell you why you should elect me. I've dedicated my entire career to advocacy. I'm an attorney and primarily a litigator. I've represented very brave employees who have come forward with allegations of sexual harassment and assaults against their supervisors and managers, and have successfully represented them in lawsuits and made sure that they get at least monetary compensation for their experiences. After the COVID-19 moratoriums ended, I was very proud to stand in courtrooms on behalf of our military veterans as they were being evicted from their apartments. And pretty recently in Santa Cruz County, I was able to successfully represent the family of Governor Raul Castro in getting their house back to them in a lawsuit against the University of Arizona. We were able to get that house back to them and a 6-figure settlement along the way. So that's work that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to walk into my office every single day and represent my clients and making sure that we are getting them solutions that they need. Now, I would love to have the honor of being elected by our voters to represent them as well, not just in the courtroom, but in the state legislature. So I look forward to a good dialogue between the 3 of us tonight. Thanks for having me.
Very good. I just want to let you know what order I'm going to put people in, and then the person who goes first will drop to the bottom for the next question. Brianna, we're going to start with you, and then Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, and then Consuelo Hernandez. Ms. Ortega, we're going to start off with the topic of immigration and border security. And we recently asked our readers what are the issues that are most important to you now. And I was really surprised to see that just zoom right to the top for a lot of them. Senate Republicans voted last week to put the Secure Border Act on the November ballot. It would, among other things, give local law enforcement agencies and judges the power to enforce federal immigration law. For example, arresting anybody who made entry into the country through places other than a designated port. Other parts of the act deal with access to housing and food assistance for undocumented people in Arizona. What do you think of the Secure Border Act? And if you don't like it, what's your plan?
Great question, and I absolutely understand why our voters are so concerned about border issues, especially in our district. Like I said, I was raised by 2 immigrant parents, so immigration policy is something that hits very close to home for me. I am absolutely and unequivocally against the Senate's attempt to, basically take over federal jurisdiction and not protect our dreamers. Create a situation just like SB 1070, where we are having people based off the color of their skin being targeted. We cannot have legislation like that. It is absolutely against not only just moral values, but we also have to look at the economic effect of that to our state, like we saw in SB 1070. We have people who don't want to come to our state. We already have an issue with our abortion bans, people not wanting to come to our state. We cannot be passing legislation that are not only morally bad, but that are having a detrimental effect for everybody involved. That said, I think we all want a secure border, right? And what we need to do is make sure that Congress, the Republicans in Congress, are not standing in the way of us being able to have funding for, for our agencies to attack the fentanyl crisis and all the other issues that are legitimate issues at our border. And we want a secure border, but this is not about having a secure border. Republicans are doing this for completely different reasons, racist reasons, and I'm completely against that.
Very good. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, same question. I can repeat it if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Senate Republicans voted last week to put the Secure Border Act on the November ballot. It would, among other things, give local law enforcement agencies and judges the power to enforce federal immigration law. For example, arresting anybody who made entry into the country through places other than a designated port. Other parts of the act would deal with access to housing, food assistance for undocumented people in Arizona. What do you think of the Secure Border Act? And if you don't like it, what's your plan?
Yeah. No, I think it is fair to say that I don't like House Concurrent Resolution 2060. There are a number of issues with the legislation, first and foremost, and they reside in the constitutional realm. Quite honestly, first of all, it's a resolution that violates the single subject rule. They've crammed a lot of different pieces of policy into this, and it does not pass the sniff test. And more than likely will get tied up in the courts, which is fine by me. Secondly, when we talk about our resources, it is also unconstitutional in that it sets up a system with an unfunded mandate. It's requiring our state and local officials to act in the realm of federal, which would be about a $325 million hit to our general funds. And we don't have the budget for that. We're in a deficit budget. So there, again, it is unconstitutional. Those reasons aside, I have to say this is a political ploy to rally a base, to drive people to the polls. The Republicans know that we are on track and on path to flip both chambers in the legislature. And they know that when they scream about the border, it rallies their base, and they're hoping that this will drive people to the polls. Now, I cannot think of anything more egregious than attacking people based on their race and based on the color of their skin. They have a history of villainizing people who do not look like them. And that has no place in government.
Okay, Consuelo Hernandez.
This is a great question. I think first and foremost, we need to call it what it is. This is a Republican sham. And that's point blank. It is being used. Unfortunately, the individuals that are going to be most impacted are our most vulnerable communities. I've served as an immigration caseworker back in 2016 through the International Rescue Committee, and I was able to meet a lot of individuals who were seeking refuge into this country. There are people that are going to suffer, but this is not the way to do it. And as it was previously mentioned, not only is this unconstitutional, but this falls on our Congress to be our Republican congressional members to do something. They say this is their most important issue. They voted against the bipartisan immigration bill that was negotiated because former President Trump told them not to. They are cowards, and the only people that are going to suffer are our immigrant communities that need the help. And I also think there's something that we need to also call it what it is. There is a crisis at the border, but it's a multifaceted crisis. We have a crisis because there's not enough people that are able to support the individuals through the process. When it comes to the court system, there's a humanitarian crisis, and on both sides of the border, on the Mexican side and on the US side, there's a lot of finger pointing, but at the end of the day, the only ones who have jurisdiction over this is our federal government. I fielded calls along with my sister and a few other members of the House and Senate members, making sure that we applied pressure on our business community to come out. And through the efforts that I was able to help with, we were able to get some of the chambers to come out. This is going to devastate the Arizona economy. And for those who say that this will have no impact, it is wrong. For many years after SB 1070, they boycotted Arizona, and we cannot afford to do that when we are facing such a huge deficit in Arizona.
I want to go back to something that Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton said. You were talking about how this may be used to drive people to the polls because the numbers are so close. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the state Senate, there are 30 members, 16 are Republican, 14 are Democrat. So one person makes all the difference there. In the House, is it 31-29, I believe?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
Republican to Democrat. So this is how close things are. And frankly, in Arizona, if you look over the last 40, 50 years, it's just almost always been wholesale Republicans there. And there is a chance that they could lose that. So I think it's very important to keep attentive to what's out there. And is it really an issue, or is it something people are using to drive others to the poll? Very good point. I want to stay on immigration. And Brianna, we're going to go back to you. I attended a recent U.S. House Judiciary Committee hearing in Sahuarita. U.S. Representative Jim Jordan was there, and he said we are dealing with the harmful effects of, quote, an open border. He said that under President Trump, it was a closed border. Would you agree that the border is open? And do you think the border is secure? And what exactly is secure? I know there are a lot of questions in there, so I can certainly repeat that. But Brianna Ortega, I'll throw this to you.
Yes. So I think, I would think that we can agree, I hope, at least with the voters at home, if they're watching, that we have people just like Jim Jordan who make a lot of big statements about the border. But I grew up here. I grew up in LD21. I have been close to the border, crossing the border my entire life. And this idea that it's an open border and we are so insecure and we have so many dangerous people coming over is just not accurate. When you go down to Nogales, it's safe, right? It's safe. I don't agree that we have an open border. Do we need a secure border? Yes, sure. And we should provide funding for some things that we can address that are affecting our communities. Like I said, we have a fentanyl crisis happening. That's a big one. We also have people coming over who are seeking asylum, who are being pretty much left out onto the streets without any kind of humanitarian aid. So absolutely, do we need to do work on the border? Yes, unequivocally, yes. But it's not the work that these Republicans are saying need to be there. We do not have an open border where people are just crossing over. They'll take a clip of a nice 3-second video and put it on Twitter, and then it's retweeted all over the country. For us who've grown up in this district, we know that that's simply a gross mischaracterization at best.
Very good. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, same question.
Yeah, I have to say that no, we don't have an open border. And I find it really interesting that we have two borders in this country. We have a northern border and we have a southern border. And I never hear any screaming about our northern border. And I've always kind of wondered, why is that? Why is the only border we focus on to the south of us? Absolutely, I agree that we need to know who's coming in and out of our country. What we need is we need better management at the border. We need the funds invested to process people as they are coming through. And we need the Republicans in Congress. They had a bipartisan bill on their desk that they refused to hear. We need them to step up. If they are going to scream about this and say we need to fix it, the solution was on their desk and they chose to do nothing. So for all of the screaming, and I will tell you, my church has spent years providing hospitality and being a hub for making sure people have safe transit, getting to where they need to go. My congregation has spent many, many hot summers down in Arivaca, helping and providing aid. This is something that the people in Southern Arizona, we don't fear the border. We show up and we freaking help. And for government, for people in government to say, this is something that's horrible. Well, if it's horrible, how come? I belong to an organization that has spent decades providing relief. The only thing that the fear mongering does is it rips at the fabric and the threads of our community. The threat to separate our families and to pull them apart and to send people to countries that they know nothing about is nothing but cruel and heartless and a waste of time and energy and resources coming out of our government.
Very good. Consuelo Hernandez, do we have an open border?
I'll actually push back on that term, Dan. I know it's not your words, but you know, I'm just sick and tired of having my Republican colleagues play dress up and show up to my district. I invite them to pick up their costume and join me a day in Nogales. It is actually pretty calm, as Brianna mentioned. There's absolutely not an open border, and that statement in itself plays into the Republican game plan to try to distract people of the real issues that we're facing in our communities. They're using people that look like me as pawns to, you know, openly be racist, because at the end of the day, the HCR that is going to be coming to the House fairly soon is another show me your papers bill on steroids. And, you know, I'm just really concerned that a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side don't understand immigration law, because if they did, they would know that we don't have jurisdiction over that. And I think where we need to focus on is making sure that our Border Patrol has enough resources to make sure that they can do their job. We need to invest in technology, because instead of building a wall, they should, if they wanted to actually do something, we would have invested in technologies to make sure we were detecting tunnels, because fentanyl doesn't, you don't jump over a fence to bring in fentanyl, period. And I think it's illogical to think that that's what's actually happening. And I also think it's very telling that the only sheriffs that joined the Republicans in their political theater were sheriffs that were actually from border communities. They were not invited. So the only ones are from very nice counties that are not next to border. They don't know the realities, and we absolutely do not have an open border.
So you were saying then, I just want to follow up with you, that how the House concurrent resolution, we don't have that type of jurisdiction. So, and this is that Secure Border Act that they're calling it. So are you saying, and I believe Stephanie Stahl Hamilton said earlier, that is this the thing that could be tied up in courts? Could we be throwing something on the November ballot that we have no right to do? Is that what you would say?
Absolutely. And I think the Republicans also know that. But as it was mentioned before, this is their way of being able to drive their base to the polls. And it sounds, I mean, we all want to secure the border. If you see a ballot initiative that says on your November ballot, Secure the Border Act, a normal person is going to say, yeah, I agree with that. But unfortunately, because they bundled all of the really terrible immigration bills into one, a voter who doesn't have the capacity to read pages of a bill that's in legal language is not going to understand that what we're actually doing is we're going to be tied up in the courts, and we're going to spend so much money trying to defend our state because this was something that they wanted to do if it were to pass. So I'm really concerned that as the party of fiscal responsibility, that they're not fiscally responsible, because they are very much aware that not only is this going to be tied up in the courts, but it's also going to cost our agencies more money that they do not have funds for.
Brianna Ortega, I want to follow up, and then I'll come back to you, Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton. You said something earlier about the 3 seconds of video on X, and people believe it, and I believe that Consuelo was also referring to this, that people will believe what they're told rather than sitting down and reading pages and pages. It's just the reality. But isn't that the problem?
Right. So, I want to answer your question, but I do want to note very quickly on the constitutional aspect of this. I said in my opening, I'm an attorney. I know a lot of legislators are attorneys. We take an oath of attorney, and in that oath of attorney, it says we are not going to put forth things that are unconstitutional. We will abide by the Constitution. So for me, when I see things like that are being pushed forward that are clearly unconstitutional, we have the highest court of the land saying it's unconstitutional, but we're going to do it anyway. I mean, that to me is just really, really detrimental. And I'm really disappointed in those legislators who are attorneys and have taken that oath, and are still pushing this forward for their own personal gain. But to answer your question, I mean, it is part of the problem, and something that some voters, they don't have the time to read all those pages, right? So to me, it's not on the voter necessarily. We love to have informed voters. That's why we have debates like we do today. But we can't expect them to read pages and pages. So we need to be more responsible with what we're pushing out. And of course, legislators are some of the Republican legislators are the ones pushing this out. And to me, it really is an ethical issue. And we need to figure out a way that we can get our messaging across. And I'm hopeful, a lot of the Democratic Party, we do have a good part of the youth coming in. When they're registering to vote at 18, a lot of them are checking that Democrat box. And so they're getting more involved and being able to get that information more quickly and in an ethical way. And I'm hoping that future generations are in tune with that and know, hey, you can't believe everything that you see, because they grew up with the internet, right? So they know how things can be convoluted. So I'm hopeful that just general education with younger generations on the technology issue will help that.
Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton will give you the last word on immigration.
Right. Well, and I want to go back to the House Concurrent Resolution 2060, something that has been married in the language of this bill, which is two wholly different parts of government or policy, is that fentanyl. So we do have a fentanyl crisis and immigration. So are we talking about drug enforcement and administration, and we're talking about immigration? And I don't think that the two go hand in hand. One of the things that studies have shown us is that the fentanyl that's coming into the country is coming in from people who are legally entering the country. And to paint it as illegal immigration is not correct. So yeah, we've got a drug problem. And that's not to discount the tunnels and the things that are happening, but a big percentage of the drug fentanyl that's coming in is being carried by people who come in legally. And I will say that a lot of it is being discovered at our ports, which is what the ports are designed to do. So if we fund the workforce at the ports to separate out the immigration part and help process people, and we've got funding for drug enforcement, the system works. And to marry these two, first of all, is just plain wrong. It's not what the statistics show. And it's mixing two branches of government and policy that should not be in each other's jurisdiction.
Very good. Okay, Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, we're going to stick with you as we move on to a question about the state budget. The legislature passed a nearly $18 billion budget this month, and Democrats are not happy with the budget, and they're not happy with Governor Hobbs right about now. What doesn't work for you in that budget, and what do you like?
We haven't passed a budget yet. We haven't even gotten to voting on a budget.
Right. The governor, though, has gone in a direction opposite of what she was talking about in January, where she indicated that she would protect certain things. She would maybe go after the ESA money, things like that. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So right now, what are you not happy with in that proposed budget?
Well, I'm not happy that the budget that was delivered last year, filled with all kinds of special interests and pet projects, really did a lot to put us in the position we're in right now. And the governor is going to have to make some hard choices because we are in a deficit budget. Right now, I think the deficit is right at $1.2 billion, which is down from the projected $1.8 billion, but it's still well over $1 billion that we're having to deal with. And from the meetings that we've had, we've looked at it from the 30,000 foot view because we've not been given specifics or details. I believe the governor is doing what she can to try to protect as much of the investment in our social services that reach people directly. But I will say that the sacred cow in the room is the ESA vouchers, money that is going to over 75% of families whose children have never gone to a public school. That money is going into the pockets of parents who were, prior to the universal expansion, paying for private school education, which is, I don't care how you paint it, it is unconstitutional. And I cannot believe our state has gotten away with this for years. So I think, the devil is in the details. We have not been given a lot of details. We haven't begun negotiating. I know that the Democrats, we are prepared. We are willing to go to the mat for the things that are our priorities. But from what I understand, the Republicans haven't even had their small group meetings, haven't even begun talking about the budget because they're too busy trying to drum up their base and scream about things that they know will get their people angry. So right now, I am just in a space of being very frustrated. I'm looking forward to the time where we are called back to the legislature to sit down and start negotiating and to start digging into the details of the budget so that we can push for the things that we know our people need and the investments that are not pet projects, but the things that will do the most for the most vulnerable in our state.
You mentioned the ESAs. I'm going to follow up with you here. Can we go a little bit more broader as far as public education and the budget goes? What you're hearing, what you're seeing, do you like it? What do we need to do?
Oh my gosh, heavy sigh, deep breath. 7 years ago, 6 years ago, in 2018, when the first Invest in Ed Act came out, we knew that we needed about $1 billion investment, just shy of $1 billion investment in our public education in order to get us back to the pre-recession funding of 2008. So they were looking at a 10-year gap and just trying to get there. And, I have a concern that, funding for capital improvements, that we need. TUSD, the school district that my husband works for and where my children attend, don't have textbooks because we can't afford them. My daughter for years worked with a computer that was held together with duct tape because they didn't have money for upgrades and to fix the technology they had invested in to produce 21st century learners, students ready to enter the workforce when they graduated. And so my concern is that we were starting to catch up with the district additional assistance. We were starting to catch up with the capital improvements. And yet we know that there are some schools that are having to close their doors because the numbers don't make sense. And so I am so frustrated that we knew back in 2018, 6 years ago, we needed $1 billion just to get us back to 2008. That's still going backwards. And here we are, 2024, and we're not even beginning to be positioned to move into the next decade. And for me, that's very frustrating. And we know that the thing that has punched the biggest hole in our general funds, the general budget, is the universal voucher expansion.
Okay, very good. Consuelo Hernandez, talk about the budget, what you like and don't like in what we know about it thus far, and then give us your thoughts on the funding of education in Arizona.
So sure, I'll just start by addressing something that was mentioned by Representative Hamilton. I think she mentioned that she didn't support the last year's budget because there was pet projects by lobbyists. I think that's what the words were. I just want to push back on that. I'm proud
I
to
didn't
have-
say lobbyist. I said it was pet projects full of pork. I did not say lobbyists.
Okay,
I'm
well,
not attacking the lobbyists.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you for clarifying, but either way, I just wanted to go back to our last year's budget. I was proud to be one of the only Democrats in my district, in this district, to have supported Governor Hobbs in her first bipartisan budget. Through those investments, it wasn't just pet projects. We had the most money coming into our district. I was at the table fighting to make sure that we got money for community health centers, the most we have seen in LD21. We were able to get money, 8.6 million for I-19 and Ruby Road funding, which we had been hoping for years. I was able to secure funding for our Pima community colleges because since the Republican administration zeroed out their budget, even the 2 million that we were able to bring to them was a great deal. We got money for Dreamers, 500,000. We got money for our universities and for feminine hygiene products as well. So not everything in that budget that it was Governor Hobbs' bipartisan negotiated budget was a pet project. I think that's offensive to our community because there's never been that large of a historic investment that I fought for this year's budget. I don't know what it looks like. We haven't really seen anything besides we did go into group meetings, and I don't know who else has been in those separate group meetings from our Democratic caucus. I think that the assumption is, as Democrats, that we're going to just support whatever it is that is going to be given to us. But I don't think that's acceptable anymore. We need to make sure that we see the budget before it's given to us and told you need to vote on this. I did fight back in last year's budget, and that's how I was able to bring money into our district. This time around, I don't support the exact same budget happening. I also just want to address there's a $1.8 billion deficit, but we also have $1.4 billion in our rainy day fund. So there is money there. For me, what I would like to see in terms of K through 12 funding is making sure that we protect that funding, the ongoing funding. And it's not enough, but I think at this point, it's more of like, what can we protect? For me, that's important. Also making sure that we support the childcare subsidies. That helps a lot of our working class families here in the district. The federal program is set to expire soon, and at the state level, I'm hoping that we can, I know that's one of Governor Hobbs' priorities. I'm hoping that as Democrats, we can be united in supporting initiatives like that. But for me, that's what I would like to see. And also guardrails on ESAs. I am not very optimistic in an election year that we're going to get a lot of work done there in ESAs, unfortunately. But can we set guardrails? I think maybe if we push hard enough, we can. Apart from that, I don't know if there's anything else we're realistically going to be able to do. And those would be my priorities.
Very good. Okay, Brianna Ortega, the proposed budget. What do you like? What do you not like about what you know about it? I know that you are not in the legislature, and then specifically your thoughts on education funding in Arizona.
Yes. So we don't have, just like the other two have said, we don't have an official budget, and we don't know the details. What I do think though is this has primarily been a conversation between the governor's office and then Republican legislators, right? We can't function. This is not a way to function a legislature without having the Democrats part of the conversation, part of the solution. So that's number one. We absolutely need Democrats to be at the table so we can make sure that the populations in our districts are being funded where they need to be. What is most pressing for our districts. So that's number one. Number two, on education, education is very close to my heart. My father was a public school teacher. He taught at many of our schools in our district. He was a Sunnyside High School and Sahuarita High School teacher. He taught at a middle school, Calabasas Middle School in Rio Rico. He is no longer a teacher. And he's no longer a teacher because he just could not make ends meet. It was too difficult for him. So he switched jobs. He left the profession. And if I'm being honest, there was a change in him, like in his personality when he left teaching. He was less patient. He was less happy with his jobs. He goes to work. He's not excited about work. And when you have teachers, my dad's not the only one. We hear this all the time. Teachers who are leaving the profession because they just can't make enough money. And it's not just the teachers, it's administrators, it is maintenance staff, all across the board. They are not making enough money, and our children are losing out on that. They're losing out on passionate administrators and teachers who want to be there to help them. So that's where I come from, just to give you a background on my education. I was raised by a public school teacher. I've been, I was a K through 12 public school student in Arizona, graduated from Sahuarita High School. So, but we also need to look at our community colleges as well. So I am an adjunct professor at the FEMA Community College satellite campus in Nogales, and they absolutely need more funding because a lot of students in our district, in Santa Cruz County specifically, they don't have cars to drive up to Tucson. They're working full time while they get their education. But we're seeing a loss of funding to these community colleges. Of course, we were able to get good funding through Representative Hernandez's work last year on the budget, but we need to protect that and make sure that we are advocating for community college students as well, because we want to make sure that they have the same opportunities, right? We have a lot of students who are leaving Nogales to go to Tucson, to go to Phoenix, and there's not as much of a workforce in Nogales, and that's really affecting the community. So the best way we can protect that and make sure that Santa Cruz County is thriving, because we have a lot of people in the state don't know how much economic contribution Santa Cruz County puts for our state. We are one of the largest agriculture import sites in the entire United States. I think it's something around 80% of the United States' agriculture comes through the Nogales Port of Entry. So we have a lot of economy there that's helping, but we need to make sure that we have the workforce prepared for that. And to do that, we need to make sure that our students down there have the same opportunities as students in metropolitan areas, right? I want to make sure that in our budget, we are making sure that we are doing what we can for education K through 12. Like Representative Hernandez said, it's difficult with Democrats in the minority for now. It's difficult, but we can absolutely, I think, make headway on putting in some guardrails, and then also making sure our community college students are getting the opportunities that they need.
Very good. We're going to move on to the topic of abortion, and we have a question from a viewer, and that question is, and we're going to start with Consuelo Hernandez. The question is, what are the reproductive and contraceptive stances of each candidate to protect healthcare and privacy issues between doctor and patient's needs?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question. I have been, ever since I ran for school, I started at the school district level. I'm serving my 6th year, then a Sunnyside School District, and now my first term as your state representative. I've always been endorsed by pro-choice organizations like Arizona List, Emily's List, and I'm very proud to have always been pro-choice and supporting pro-choice women. And something that is really important to me is not only making sure that we have access to abortion, but also making sure that as lawmakers, we protect the right to contraceptives as well. The Republican handbook that was accidentally leaked to us was their goal that was laid out, their slide deck that they sent out, was to dilute the vote of the abortion initiative in the November ballot. That is really concerning to me. I have been supportive of the abortion initiative, and I will make sure that I try to do as much as possible. I am a small campaign, but making sure that voters know what's happening at the state level. And I'll continue to fight to make sure that we have access. We serve here in LD21 a majority Latino, African American, and Native American community. And to me, I don't worry about myself, but when I think about access to abortion, I think about the young woman who will not have access to abortion if something were to happen to them. They wouldn't have access to be able to travel. That's who I think about. That's who's in the back of my mind when I'm campaigning, to make sure not only am I helping myself to get reelected, but making sure that I help in the flippable districts, because at the end of the day, even with the 15-week abortion ban, when it gets kicked into place, that's not enough for me. I think that there's a lot of problems with it. The fact that healthcare providers have to provide inaccurate information by state law because Republicans made it difficult to be able to have access to an abortion is very problematic. And I'll make sure that I'll continue fighting and supporting pro-choice candidates as well.
Very good. Just to follow up on that, because I want to make sure we answered the whole question. Also mentioned was contraceptive stances. And so if you have anything to add on that.
Nope. Like I mentioned, protecting access to contraceptives is very important to me across the board. So we need to be on the defense at this point to making sure that we protect access as well, and trying to make it so we're supporting, hopefully when we're in a better situation at the state level, supporting free contraceptives as well in our community health centers.
Okay, I have a follow-up question that I'm going to just tack on the end, and instead of doing all three at once. So let me throw this one at you, Consuelo Hernandez. And that is the Arizona Right to Abortion Initiative will likely be on the November ballot. And the question is, assuming you support the initiative, why is it important enough to enshrine those rights in the state constitution? That's a big step.
Yeah, our rights as women and people who are able to get pregnant are on the line. They're on the line every election. And I am just very concerned that we're going to continue to be on the chopping block. And the only way to secure something is to enshrine it in our state constitution.
Okay, very good. Brianna Ortega, let me reread that question from the viewer, and then also answer the second part of this, if you would, about enshrining it in the state constitution. That first question was, what are the reproductive and contraceptive stances of each candidate to protect healthcare and privacy issues between doctor and patient's needs?
So I am unequivocally supportive of the right to abortion and to contraception, unequivocally. In addition to that, I would like to also bring in the issue of access to abortion and contraceptives, because we might have, hopefully, I'm very supportive of the initiative we have that will likely be on the ballot. I hope that we can do it. People in Ohio did it. I think Arizona can do it. But in addition to that, we need to make sure that we are allowing, people to have access to these things. Right now, when we are dealing with abortion bans, doctors and healthcare providers are deciding that they want to go practice in a different state. There are medical students who are getting ready to graduate, getting ready to practice, and they're thinking about where they want to practice. And when it comes to states that have these bans, they're choosing to avoid it. So this is creating such a large issue, not only with abortion and contraception, it's creating a wide umbrella of issues for all types of healthcare, right? And that's something that we need to think about, because that's going to burden our access to healthcare. What good, it's wonderful that we would have a right to abortion, but if we're not also focused at the same time on access, then we are going to be left with people who might have a right to abortion, but they can't get there. They can't get to the doctor that might be 100 miles away. So that's something that we need to think about first. And there are other issues that come with that. It comes with things like funding, just because it's enshrined in our Constitution. Dan, just your second follow-up question about making sure that this is enshrined in our Constitution. we know that we have constitutional challenges of what exactly something in the Constitution means, right? That's why we have appeals courts. It's like, yes, we have this right in the Constitution, but to what extent? Right? So we need to be focused on that as well and making sure that it is an unequivocal right, that we are not concerned about, okay, what about funding? If you are on a health insurance plan that's funded by the government, does that mean that you cannot get an abortion covered? All of those factors need to be dealt with to make sure that we are protecting people as much as possible in this realm.
Very good. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, same question. I can repeat it if you'd like.
Would you please?
Yeah. What are the reproductive and contraceptive stances of each candidate to protect healthcare and privacy issues between doctor and patient's needs?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What is my stance? Well, let me start by saying that in the State of the State address, the governor laid out a trio of policies that she wanted to see us accomplish this session in the legislature. And the first, regarding privacy, was that the state right now mandates that the DHS, Department of Health and Human Services, has to compile a report every year of folks who have received abortion care. And a lot of the questions in that questionnaire are not even applicable to abortion. It's nobody's business. A lot of those questions are very invasive. And so that was House Bill 2676 that I dropped in the hopper in January. The second priority that the governor had was to repeal the 1864 abortion ban. That was a near total ban of abortion and would criminalize medical care providers with no provisions for any person who was a survivor of sexual assault. And I put that bill in the hopper in January. And then the third priority of the governor was to ensure that every Arizonan has the right to contraception. And that was House Bill 2678 that I also dropped in the hopper in January. Now, in March, we held a press conference with the governor. We, meaning Senator Sundaration, had mirror language over in the Senate. And at that press conference, Republican Sonny Borelli said, oh, we already have contraception. That's not an issue. And like I've said, Bayer aspirin, there's a company for that, but just put a Bayer aspirin between your knees, and that is so egregious, so egregious. And so in the wake of that, we took the bill to the floor and made a motion to get it up on the board, and we were denied. And right there, that tells me that we have people in this state who want to tell a person when they can get pregnant and when they can't be pregnant. And all of this is very troublesome when we look at what Alabama has done with IVF. And what we've heard Justice Clarence Thomas saying that he would reverse the court case that gives people the right to contraception. So we know that it's on the chopping block. And if we want to go back to House Bill 2677, which was the clean repeal of the 1864 abortion ban, and that was a bill that I was so proud to sponsor and see that get to the board and make it through the process. I have to say that we know that the people in Arizona want this as well. We want our people to be able to have the care, the reproductive care that they deserve. Our medical profession does not need to have the threat of incarceration. And we need our people who are survivors of sexual assault to be able to have the provision and treatments that they deserve. And so where I stand is I am pro-abortion, pro-right to contraception, and pro-mind your own darn business. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon.
Okay, very good. We're running short on time, but I do want to slip in one more question because I know, again, it has interest really across the state, and that is about water. In 2023, under Tier 2 water shortage conditions with the CAP, Arizona gave up about 9% of its total water usage. In 2024, under Tier 1 shortage conditions, we're looking at a possible 18% cut in Colorado River water. The current rules for managing the river expire at the end of 2026. How concerned should we be about water going forward? Some people say don't worry about it. Other people, it's a hair on fire situation. Brianna Ortega, we're going to give it to you.
Yeah, it's very surprising to me that there are people who say we shouldn't worry about it. We are in Arizona. We are in such a dry desert that we absolutely need to be doing work to protect our water. We have Arizona's part of this deal where it's become a really, really difficult resource. And what we need to do is make sure that we are looking at this as a whole, right? We have some cities, some municipalities doing one thing, another municipality doing another. We need to look at this holistically and make sure that we're protecting the water sources that we have. And so, of course, we have people who are making certain suggestions of we need to go to tribal lands, we need to do this. We really need to have a discussion across the board of how we are going to plan for future generations, because long after we're gone, right now we have a general access to water. Some places in rural Arizona, not so much, right? But this is really going to start affecting our population. We need to think about how we're going to fix this now, so we're not putting our children and our grandchildren in a difficult spot that we could have fixed now.
Very good. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, water.
Oh my goodness. All right. I got to remember that we only have a few minutes here. Well, in regards to the question about the Colorado River and CAP, I serve on the Arizona Reconstitution Committee, which the ARC, which is part of the ongoing discussion between the 7 basin states. So there are 7 states that have a claim to the Colorado River water. And in the past, we have had the most tense conversations and negotiations with California. But right now, the Southern Basin states really have come together, and we're looking at those Northern Basin states to come to the table with a genuine interest in coming to some agreements. This was our last ARC meeting. We were so surprised to find out that it was the Northern Basin states right now that are the most problematic and unwilling to negotiate. But that is just one part of water in Arizona. We have groundwater, we have surface water. Our surface water has been carefully, through the Groundwater Management Act, has been carefully designated, and there are different priorities of who has first priority and who doesn't. I will say out of our 22 tribes, 12 of them, maybe 13, because Navajo just got their water rights and settlements. But we still have tribes that do not have their settlements in place for what water is theirs. And it's very hard to think about how we're going to allocate water, especially when our aquifers are drying up and our rivers are shrinking, if not everybody knows what they're entitled to. That just raises the bar on anxiety. And so that's one of the things that we need to get a handle on. The 9 remaining tribes need to get their cases adjudicated, and the settlements need to happen so that our tribes know where their future water sources are coming from. And then we can allocate the rest. And then as we're talking about groundwater, we have 6 active management areas. And then beyond that, roughly about 80% of our land mass is unregulated groundwater pumping. And right now, there's a fair amount of anxiety about our groundwater management. And that's where you get the biggest, the pendulum swing, in your words. Oh, we don't need to worry. Oh no, our hair is on fire. So many counties and people in the different basins have almost come to blows over our management of our groundwater. And for me, that is where we do need to continue to push and lean into come back to the table with our Groundwater Management Act. You know, in 1980, when the Groundwater Management Act was designed, the tribes and the environmentalists were left out of the conversations and at the table. And it was decided, you know, when they reached the one agreement, it was decided, oh, we'll fix the others another day. Well, that another day, it's 2024. It's long overdue. And then the last thing that I'll say when we're talking about water is quality, you know, and that we've got neighborhoods and places throughout the state of Arizona and in Legislative District 21 that is dealing with these forever chemicals. We've got folks in our district that are on the 5th generation of illnesses, cancers, and defects because of contaminated water that happened back in the 50s and 60s. And a lot has been done. I am proud to say that my first year in the legislature, I voted on legislation that allocated money and on a focus on those forever chemicals and doing what we need to do to continue to keep our water clean. And the last thing that I will say is, you know, right now in the East Valley and the West Valley of Phoenix, there's been a moratorium on building. So what I can say is, if we do not get our water policy right, none of the other policies matter. We can see that how water affects our economy, how it affects development, and how it affects future growth. And you know, so it's very complex. It is the thing that I am the most passionate about. I could go on and on and on and have incredible nuanced conversations about water. But I think, unless you have further questions, I think I'll just stop right there.
Okay, very good. Consuelo Hernandez, water and Arizona's future.
Sure. This is a topic that we haven't really been able to address since the 1980s here in Arizona. And before I get into that, I just want to start off by thanking Governor Hobbs and our Attorney General for being able to stop the alfalfa company from Saudi Arabia from the mess that they put us in, Governor Ducey put us in at the time for the cheap leases that he had, and they were pumping our groundwater like cents on the dollar. So thank you to, that's what happens when we have Democrats in office that can stop really horrible things from continuing. And as far as water, the biggest issue that I see happening right now is a lack of groundwater regulation. As Representative Hamilton mentioned, there's a few bills that are coming through the legislative pipeline that I'm actually really concerned about, because they bundled 7 bills as of last week related to pretty much all of the bad water bills into one, and it's coming back to the legislature for us to vote on it soon. And I'm just really concerned about that, because if we want to get serious about water, we need to make sure that we are honoring what our tribes are asking of us for their support, for supporting them in what they see for their water rights. And also, I think that something that we should take a look at besides groundwater regulation is making sure that we lean on current innovations that are working. Here at the University of Arizona, there is a great collaboration between Israel and the university where they use reclaimed water in an innovative way, and it's working here. And I just wish that we were able to expand that into other parts, hopefully across Arizona one day. But there's a lot that we can learn from different countries that, you know, didn't have, that are in a similar situation where they're in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And we're one of those. So hopefully we can learn from them. But I'm hoping we can get to a point where the current water bills in the pipeline are negotiated, and that everyone is on board and not just the stakeholders that were invited to be part of the conversation.
Very good. And there was a lot of good reporting, good information out there on groundwater, CAP, Colorado River, what's going on. And I would encourage our readers to really bone up on that. It is a complex issue, but it's one that's so important to our state. So we are now going to move on to our closing statements. Each candidate is going to get 1 minute to wind things up. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, we're going to begin with you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciated this hour to have an opportunity to step through some really important and critical issues. And I have, I think I want to close by saying that this job that I have been doing, the ways in which I've been able to serve our communities has really just meant a lot. It has been a privilege and an honor. And while sometimes in the Democratic caucus, we can feel frustrated that perhaps not all of our bills are heard or have an opportunity to make it through the system. I have to say there's so much that happens being able to serve in this capacity that certainly is meaningful and impactful. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the ways in which I have been able to create some wins in our community. I think about John Everhart Insurance in Bisbee, Arizona, who is the only insurance broker in Bisbee. And folks, right now we have nationwide issues with insurance, and folks are being dropped left and right. And John came to me, and we've actually been digging into this insurance issue and have taken it up the food chain. And so that it has been my honor to work with him and step with him through this process. I think about Norman Harris in Sahuarita, who is the owner of Sahuarita Mining and Ranching Company, who reached out in January and said, hey, in May, I put in for a permit from the state to be able to transfer my cattle, and they need to be transferred. Otherwise, I'm still paying money for feed. And I was able to make one phone call, and within 24 hours, he got his permit and he was able to transport his cattle. I think about Tim Alexander, the owner of Sunshine Dentistry and Nogales, who called me and said, you know, we have such a hard time with getting our certifications to our dental hygienists after they've completed their training. And I have a shortage and I need to get these dental hygienists to work. And we've been told if we call, they go to the bottom of the pile. And I said, let me see what I can do. The very next day, after making a phone call or two, the next day I got an email saying, thank you, we've got those certificates, we can go to work. And let me tell you, I will conclude with the opening statement. When I realized how the legislature has the power and capacity to shape the everyday lives of the people in Arizona, that was what compelled me to run for office. And it is what gives me joy to serve and to know that people can reach out. My door is open, and I am happy to go to work for the people, not only in Legislative District 21, but also to go to work for the people of our state.
Very good. Brianna Ortega, you're up for closing remarks.
Just want to say thank you again to you, Dan, for moderating, and of course, Clean Elections and all the voters who tuned in tonight to listen to us. You know, I just want to say that I really not only love our district, but almost just as importantly, or maybe just as importantly, I know our district. I have lived here throughout, you know, pretty much my entire life. I lived 4 years in Washington State while I was getting my law degree, but I came back to Arizona, opened up an office in Nogales specifically because I wanted to see the people in our district do the best that they can. I think I'm poised and I'm ready to fight for us at the legislature. And we have a lot of conversations when I'm knocking on doors. So many voters, Democrat voters, say, well, we're in a Democrat minority. So what, you know, is all hope lost. And of course, we want to flip the legislature, but if we can't do that this election, doesn't mean that we can't get work done as a party minority. We've seen examples of Democratic legislators, just like Representative Hernandez, who's been able to get things moved by joining hands across the aisle, getting good legislation out. Just because we are the minority doesn't mean that we can't get good work done. And the reason why I think that I am one of the candidates that is poised to be in this position is because it is my job, it is my career as a litigator to sit down at a table with somebody who has completely different interests than I do. Right? When I go into a lawsuit and I file a lawsuit, do you think the defendant is like, yeah, I totally agree with you and we should work together? They're not that enthusiastic about it. I have to sit there, no matter what how much we want to butt heads, how much we disagree with each other. Maybe I even really dislike the way that they practice. I still have to sit down and get it done. If I couldn't do that, I couldn't make a living. It is what I do, and I really love this community so much, and I love Arizona, and I want to be able to get it done, not just for my clients, but for Arizonans as a whole. I really think that I'm somebody that is worth considering a vote for, and I hope to represent Arizona and especially our district in the legislature. Thank you.
Very good. And Consuelo Hernandez, we're going to give you the last word.
Thank you again, Clean Elections, everyone who tuned in from the District 21, Dan for moderating. I'm in my first term as a legislator. I'm a freshman Democrat who has been able to deliver results despite being in the minority party. I think about, just like Representative Hamilton, I think about every day people like my father who work construction and work 7 days a week. The 4 hours that I drive to and 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours back, I am very serious about getting to work. That is why I was able to be trusted by our unions, by our Teamsters, and by our train workers to carry their bills. Secretary Fontes trusted me enough to carry one of his bills that made it through the Senate. I am the only Democrat in this district that has been able to get the most bills passed through committees, and one was signed into law 2 weeks ago. One is pending in the Senate. I am of the opinion that it doesn't matter where you are, you can get things done. And I'm someone that has put my head down and tried to work across the aisle, and that has been proven because of my wins. And our job is not only, of course, just to make laws. I'm able to support our governor in her first bipartisan budget that I'm really proud of. I was able to get historic funding for our rural community health centers, our I-19 and Ruby Road funding. And I hope to continue that work. I'm a fighter. I have a proven track record. I am passionate, and I am also qualified. And I hope that I can earn one of your votes in this election. Thank you.
Very good. Well, I want to thank our candidates for participating. We know that you have a lot of demands on your time, especially this time of year. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the July 30th primary election. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.